What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Now today I decided to make a little tutorial video. I've been actually thinking about making tutorial series in the past. I just never really ended up doing it because I guess I never really got around to it. But I decided to make a little quick animation and basically teach you guys how to do it. So this is the animation we're gonna be learning today. Let's go back and so it's just like a little run cycle to him jumping up and trying to kick and kind of failing. So I made this in like 45 minutes. It's not like anything crazy. It's just I decided to teach you guys how to do it. The whole idea of this tutorial series is just to like how to basically figure out how to animate certain things on your own rather than copying and pasting like keyframes. And there's a lot of things where you're gonna try to animate that you're not gonna know how to do. And the whole point of this series is to teach you how to learn how to figure out how to do this certain thing, because like as long as you know the basics of animation, you should be good. So let's get started. So right now I'm gonna start off with the beginning part, the run, which is from frame 0 to 24. I just did 3 steps basically. Right now I'm animating in 30 FPS, which is the kind of the default for Minecraft animations, YouTube. Mainly animations, like regular animations, like professional ones, are like usually 24 frames per second. That's like the standard default, but I tend to do 30. I could do 24 too, but the numbers are a bit different for different things. So now I can teach you guys exactly how runs work. So in the beginning, usually every step, you at least what I usually like to do is I do either 8 or 10 frames per step. Now this one's an 8 frame run cycle basically. You could do 6 as well if you really want to do a really fast run cycle, but it's going to be a little bit harder to do because it'll be a bit more choppy, not really as smooth because there's less frames per step. Obviously it'll be a lot faster, and that's kind of like the whole point. If you want to do a really fast run cycle, you can even do 15 frames if you want a slower run cycle, but 8 frames is usually ideal. Even 10 or 8 or 10 frames is ideal. So when I animate, I like to animate in sections. So in the beginning, I like to pose my character fully, like get the first pose out of the way. So this is like obviously this is how runs work. You usually have your right hand up front if your left foot's forward, or your left hand's up front if your right foot's forward, basically. I usually like to start off with the torso, because obviously that's in runs you move. Now obviously this is not a run cycle. This is more like a run. Cycles are in place. This one was like all hand animated. Usually I do cycles if there's like a lot of running, a lot of steps. But this is only 3 steps, so it was not that big a deal. When it comes to runs, this is for some reason I have in centimeters my movement, so like I like to go for every step. I like to go 150 centimeters forward. That's usually like how far I like to go. You can go like 200 too. I've done 200 before. I've done 250 as well, which is those kinds of run cycles are fast. The further you go, the faster the run cycle is going to look, obviously, because the bigger the steps. And usually every step you want to do at least a similar range. You don't want to do like too much. You could do like maybe 5 or 6 centimeters off, like 150 and 145 or 150 and 155 or something like that. But you don't want to make it too obvious, because otherwise it'll look jerky. By the way, the time limit is really important when it comes to animation, because this timeline. So where is it? Oh, here it is. So F curve timeline. So this is really important because you can like look at your curves and tell exactly how things are moving. Now, so this is the Z movement. So this is a movement where I go forward. Usually I like to delete all the mid frames and make it linear. However, I recently learned that actually makes it look robotic, because when you're running forward, you're not running at a constant pace. Whenever you step, usually there is like a little bit of a jerk, but not so much to the point where it's noticeable. This one I didn't really do that much. I kind of just kept it how it was. That's how I could make the jerk more if I really wanted to. Obviously that's way too much. I could make it more, but for now I think this is this is pretty decent. However, I do recommend messing around with these keyframes a bit. Trying to see like when you land when you hit the ground, usually you slow down a bit and then you speed up, but not so much to the fact where it's like jerk, but it's like there's a little minor amount of jerking involved. Okay, so now that I have this this back, so what I like to do in run cycles is this guy's already posed up completely how it should be every step. Now what I like to do is I go to frame 8, and obviously if it's a cycle, I'm going to keyframe it there so it stays in place. And then what I like to do here is go up and then forward a bit, so that he's like, and also obviously you want to bring this down and rotate him like that, so that he's kind of even with the other foot, and do the same, bring him up back here like that. There we go. So obviously And then obviously I want to bring my leg up because it's not going to go like that. He has like, he goes up in a way and then he hits the ground. Now that was a little too much, I think, forward. So, and obviously this guy is going to stay here. And instead I'm going to make him move back. And I think this guy's a little too far up, but there we go. Okay, cool. What the hell? Okay, no. Boom. Boom. Okay, so that's kind of how I do like steps. It's so basically he goes like this, and then obviously this is rotated weirdly, but I can fix that by doing this. There we go. Now, the leg kind of just goes forward, and then it kind of comes up a little bit, and then it goes down. And usually like your heel lands first. The only issue with this I see right now is it should be like this more like, and this guy should be like that. There we go. That's much better. Now that's kind of usually how my steps are. I can do 16 and I can redo it. So let's do the same with the other foot. So what I like to do, if this is a cycle, I'm going to copy and paste that. And then usually what I like to do here is I like to do this and do that. So that it's still going. And over here, his feet, his knee's supposed to come up over here. So like I'll do this, and usually what I like to do every step, which I didn't explain last as I did before, was I like to offset it either 1 or 2 frames behind, so that he kind of like his foot reaches for the ground instead of like just touching it. So for example, like the ground frame is over here. I'll copy this over here to 14, and then so you hit the floor here. However, I'll also, once I get here, I will rotate his leg so that it's like, so that his heel touches the front ground first, and then he hits the floor. So this is usually how my feet come out. And usually you don't want to see that frame twice, but this is usually how my feet go. Now obviously I need to copy and paste that too. So let's do this. Go to 16 again. Bring this guy here, copy and paste this. Now obviously this is cycles, so that's why I'm copying and pasting, but usually copying and pasting isn't the best thing to do. And obviously, since this is a run cycle, there are a few frames where actually there isn't, huh? So yeah, let's actually fix that. So I'm gonna make a few frames where there is no, where their foot's in the air the whole time. Oh, that's even better. Okay, so as you can tell, he's a frame where his feet aren't on the ground. And then it hits the floor, and then it runs forward, and then now I gotta fix that over here. So let's do that right now. So yeah, and obviously there we go. So now that's a little bit too much, but okay, there we go. So that's kind of how like my feet go. It's not really anything insane. It's just I like to have the heel hit first, because usually in runs like in real life you'll see there are people that run with their on the tip of their feet, but that's not a very common way to run. So unless you're like a runner, but usually it's like it looks better in animations to run with the heel. So that's what I enjoy doing. Now that's the feet part of the actual run cycle. Now if you could tell on this one, basically that's kind of like what I like to do. Like a lot of run cycles I see, well, especially the Minecraft intro community, they don't tend to look at like these small little details in the runs in movement and animation in general. They just like look at the end frame where the foot's on the ground, and then just that's all they do. They don't like animate the leg kind of like going down. They just have it going straight on, like landing with both legs on the floor, or both the whole foot on the floor, kind of, instead of like just the edge. So that's one thing I would say to like improve your animation, to like little details basically when it comes to like steps and running and things like that in general. That's really helpful right there. You could probably tell that I move my shoulders as well up top. That's another little tiny thing that not many intro Minecraft animators used to do. They usually don't move their shoulders as often. I've noticed a lot of people just use the hand control, which is great. Obviously, you need that, but the shoulder also matters. So let's get to the upper body. Now, when it comes to your torso, obviously I did the up and downs. Every like halfway between a step, you want to go to your highest point, and then it goes down and hits the floor. Now, there's different ways to do this. You can go into your timeline, your F curves timeline, and one thing that I recommend doing a lot, especially if you're trying to do a move where your body's gonna hit the floor like hard, go to your keyframe, right click it, and then go to break tangents, and this allows you to like move these things separately, so you can make them like land faster instead of having like something like this, where instead of having to do this all the time. It makes things a little easier. So, no, obviously this is going to make your landing feel more sharp, which is great, but like in run cycles, you don't want to overdo it, because then it could be like a cartoony style then, but I wouldn't overdo this. Like, I wouldn't do it like this. I would do it maybe like that. Now this side doesn't really matter, because obviously there's only one side anyway. Now this one is really, really exaggerated, and mainly because I needed to show emphasis on power when it comes to the jump. This section is where he actually jumps up before his kick. So right around here. See how it's not like it's got to have some, like, it's got to go fast to show like power. And because there is in animation normally when you do jumps, there's a lot of anticipation most of the time, but for this example, since I was doing it right after a run, I couldn't really do that much anticipation, so I had to make it all like I had to do it really quickly, which is what I did. Which is why I did it like the way I did it here. But normally when you're trying to do jumps and stuff, and he's just kind of standing in place, there's obviously a slow anticipation to it, unless you're just doing a regular hop. But if you're doing like a hardcore jump, like a very long jump, then I would recommend doing like a longer anticipation, because that like shows that you're using more force to push yourself. When it comes to like keeping momentum of the run and jumping right off that, you can't really show much. There's not enough time to have that much anticipation. So, yeah, I wasn't really able to show it here. But that's basically that. So, let's make a preview. Hardware. And 273. Now, this is usually what I like to do whenever my like Cinema 4D is running kind of slow. But basically, oh, this is crappy quality. Let me just do it again. So let's make this like 1920. Okay. So this basically allows me to look at the animation in real time, like 30 frames per second, because right now it's running really slow, obviously. But this is the actual speed. So, as you can tell, so the upper body rotates towards your leg that's on the ground. That's kind of how runs and walks work in general. And whenever I do a run, what I like to do is, in order to make it feel like there's more weight attached to it, I like to have a little rotation in the head every step. So like either 1 or 2 frames forward, I rotate my head down so it has a little bounce. That's just a little extra thing that I like to add to my runs, and well, walks included, but not as often. Not like as exaggerated in walks, because walks are kind of slower. And obviously I also like to rotate my head forward, so that it's looking kind of forward the whole time, instead of like kind of instead of rotating with my body. It's supposed to rotate where it's looking. Usually when you run in real life, your head's kind of stationary, looking in a direction, which is what I like to do usually in my runs. But yeah, there's that. So that's kind of how you do a run cycle. You do the bounce, and then obviously you rotate the like when it comes to the other parts of the body, you do the same exact thing. You rotate them towards the leg that is forward, and that's really it. Honestly, you just do it a little bit, a little less here, a little bit less here, and then even a little less here, just to have a little bit of like a differentiation, so that it's like you can tell it's kind of curving. You want curves in your animations. You don't want anything to be completely straight. And then also one last thing I like to do is in my shoulders. I like to rotate them the one that's the hand that's forward, opposite to my forward leg. I like to move that shoulder forward, and the other shoulder I move backwards. And then 8 frames in, I do the same thing. And also, what I recently started doing is I like to also midway is when the arm that is about to go forward, then for the next step, I like to bring him up, while the other arm other shoulder I like to bring it down. Not the arm, the shoulder. Not like a circle, but it goes forward and backwards more, but it goes up and down a little bit as well. So I recently started adding that as well. It's not very obvious, obviously, because obviously it's not very noticeable, but you don't want it to be super noticeable because otherwise it'll kind of just take people out of the actual animation. So I have that's just a little bit of an extra thing that I like to add in my animations. Now let's get to the jump part. Now when it comes to jumps, what I like to do, and you'll probably notice me in the if we've watched the speed animation at the end, I like to start with I start with the torso the whole time. Like I begin with the torso, and I go to the highest point. I make a keyframe, and then I kind of work from there, and I try to like see, try to make the curve as curvy as possible, as smooth as possible, not so jagged. And then I usually like to, once I get to that point, I move all the body parts to I pose it to the part where, like that he should be looking at the highest point. And then at the end, I like to go to my torso, and go and basically move it to my point where I land. Which is what I did in the speed art or speed animation as well. Probably noticed. And then after that, I do the in between stuff. And usually what I like to do is, because he is on his left leg, and he's jumping on from one leg. Usually if you look at jumps, and also I recommend looking at references for a lot of your work. But anyways, when you do jumps with one leg, you usually swing your other leg forward to help push yourself forward. That's what I worked on here. I swung my right leg forward and kept my left leg on the ground for the actual push off. And then my left leg kind of just catches up while my right leg just stays up as high as it can. And then I obviously, usually when it comes to jumps, you usually want to work with your upper body as well, and your torso. You want to rotate it. If you would do jumps where they, at least for this one specifically, you want to make everything get as crunched as possible to exaggerate the kick. The more curvy you make it, the more exaggerated the end point will be. And because I decided to make him look like he was clumsy, I ended up making him try to straighten out late. So after 37 is when I started to straighten out. You want the exaggeration to be as quickly, or you want the movement to be done as fast as possible, especially with kicks and punches, because you want them to hurt. You don't want them to just you don't want to just touch somebody. You want to hit them hard. So usually when you want to do stuff like that, you do it quickly, do it as fast as possible, so in the least amount of frames you could. So I would usually do it for a kick. It's usually 2 or 3 frames, but you want to exaggerate the first pop. There's pops in the beginning of a punch, and then at the end it slows down. So that's where the initial force is going to come from, the pop. So usually the pop is a 1 frame after the anticipation part. You anticipate, and then you pop 1 frame after the anticipation, and then you slow down over time, basically. But I didn't really exactly do this here because of the fact that I was making it so he was supposed to look clumsy. He wasn't meant to look like he was doing a lot of power. So instead I made him look like he was just kind of straightening out, and then he just fell on his back. But I would recommend do an initial pop movement, here, I can do it right here. So basically, let's do this kind of thing. So 38. So let's see, he anticipates from, or actually, let's be like this. It'll be like that. So he anticipates like that, and then usually the pop frame would be, let's see. Pop frame would be over here, 36, 1 frame in. He goes like that. So boom, and then he goes forward. So it's like kind of like this. So he's anticipating and then boom. Anticipating and then boom. Kind of thing. Obviously, that's just the hands. I'm going to have to do shoulders and stuff like that too. But that's kind of how usually you want to do punches and kicks. You need anticipation, and then obviously you want to pop. Pop is the biggest part, most important part of most things. You could exaggerate it more if you want, or less if you really want. But that's really up to you. Obviously, this is a little too slow, so pop. But the pop should be a little bit faster for this one. So, boom, like that. That would be like a fight. That's kind of how you do kicks in general. So that's what I recommend when it comes to punches and kicks, to have a pop, because a lot of people forget about the pop. They just kind of just do like, this is what I see a lot of people doing, is they just do this. They delete the pop. They don't have a pop initially, actually, and they just have like this, and then the end point, and then they do the beginning, the middle point, where they fix the middle, so like it's like a straight punch instead of like a weird rotation thing, and they do this kind of thing, boom, which is fine too, but there's like, as you can tell, there's not much power in that. There isn't much power in this kind of thing. But if you have a pop, like this, for example, then it'll come out a lot stronger of a punch. Boom. Boom. And obviously that's not the best there, but that's how you do a punch usually. So yeah, that's that's that kind of thing. That's the basics of punches and kicks and stuff. You need pops and you need anticipation, and obviously you follow through. Now I didn't do follow through here because obviously follow through just you kind of just figure out from experience how follow through happens. Usually it's just like you either stay in the air for a little bit and then you kind of slowly bring it down. If you look at boxers in general, when they punch, they don't normally just drop their hands right away. They drop it over time. Like they keep it up for a while, and then they usually keep it around here. I'm gonna move it a little bit, and then they bring it down, kind of thing. So that's usually how you want to do punches, and then they go down. And obviously, when you go down, they don't go on a straight line. They go on like a curve. So something like that. And straighten that out as well. And there we go. So that's kind of how it works. That's kind of just like the very, very basic portion of it. Obviously, this doesn't look very good from the start, but that's how you usually do punches and kicks and fighting animations usually when it comes to like quick reactions. Now, when it comes to landing, this is the fun part because let's get to the jump part. Like, so he jumped, obviously. Now when he lands, now this is the really most important thing to do when it comes to jumps. Go into your F curves, and you always want to make it hit the floor hard. So usually it's going to start off, it's going to be default like this or something like that, where it's going to hit and it's going to slow down. You don't want that. You want to right click it, go to break tangents. I already did that here. And basically do something like that. So they hits the ground really fast. Like basically what these graphs do, if this doesn't make any sense to you, is so right now this is height, up and down is height. This is because we're in the Y position. X position, this is the right and the left sides. This is back and now if you go in the Z position, this is gonna be forward and backwards. Now it really depends on where you started animating and how this is placed. So right now, as you can tell, the Y is up and down, the Z is that way, and the X is like this. So keep that in mind with these, how this works. So the Y position is up and down. So basically, this is the actual up and down in space. Now this is time. Now, obviously, the closer these two frames are, let's say the closer these two frames are, let's say I were to move this forward. Now this would get to this frame faster, which would mean I control Z, but this from here to there to here would happen a lot faster, and all these keyframes would just become like compressed kind of thing. Obviously this is not showing in real time, by the way. So let Let me see, all frames. Let's turn that off. Does that fix it? Oh, it does. Okay, so yeah, so this is real time. This would be this for the time it takes to get from here to here. If I were to move this frame forward, would be quicker. So basically, this whole jump would become a lot faster, which could be like your style. There are people like Skibbs, for example. I know he likes to do really fast, quick movements, which looks great, honestly, but it's a style kind of thing. I like to do it like this. This has been my style for like a few years now. Now, this is basically a stylized thing that I do. This isn't realistic at all. When he lands, you don't just like, if you could tell, you don't, usually in realism, depending on how high you go when you land, if it's like a ball or something, it's going to go halfway, half the height, and then it'll hit the ground again, then go half height again, half and half and half. That's how you do the bouncing ball challenge, usually, and bouncing balls in general. But when it comes to people, it's a little bit different because people have like limbs and all kinds of things, and it makes them a lot heavier. So usually they hit the ground, they go up just a little bit, and then they hit the ground again. They don't bounce, they kind of just stay flat. This one, I made it so that he hits the ground, he bounces very minimally, but the first bounce, the initial bounce after like this bounce right here is faster, and then I have it slow down for the last bounce because it just looks better in my opinion for my style. That's what I do. How do you like when you land? I usually like to work with the torso first, the main torso movement. So I do that whole bounce thing. So once that's looking good, then what I like to do is when I'm looking down, I like to look from here, from the ground up like that. And now what I like to do is usually before he lands, his legs hit the floor first, and then his body hits the floor, then his legs go up. And then again, his legs hit the ground again first, then his body hits the ground, then it go up again, then his legs, and then after the second bounce, his legs go up alone, but his body barely goes up, and then his legs hit the ground, kind of a little bit similar timing to like the body. That's usually what I like to do there. And then with the hands, kind of a similar thing, but I usually like to offset them a little bit, like the body and the legs hit first, then the hands hit, and then they bounce. Then they go in the air. Then they hit the ground. And it's kind of like you kind of just mess around with like timings and stuff like that. And then same with the head. You offset everything as well. You could do more work with the upper back and the back, lower back, and mid back as well. But for this, I didn't really think I needed it because it was a minimal movement, such minimal movement that like I don't think there was really a reason to do that. But however, I would recommend doing it as much as you can to make it look more realistic, or at least more like a better quality. So there's that, and then after that as well, what I'd like to do is when the hands like actually like hit the floor and stay there, if the body is still moving forward, I like to animate the hands so they move with the like they're stuck to the ground kind of thing. It just looks better that way. When it comes to animation, you don't want everything to move at the same time. Like in general, you want to offset the whole body in general. Offsetting is one thing that has really made my animations a lot better. And also one other thing is knowing your rig. So, for example, FK and IK switches. That's really helpful for when you're doing jumps, for example. Usually, your rigs are gonna have your feet IK initially, and your hands are gonna be FK. However, I recommend going into your animation, into your rig itself, and looking at what they have. For example, for this one, since I was in the air, I didn't need my legs to be IK anymore because basically, like, they don't have it would make things easier if I could just move the whole body with the torso and the legs coming with it instead of just having to manually animate the legs while the body's already animated with the hands and everything. So what I like to do is what I did basically here was on frame 29 I made a keyframe, and then 30 I keyframed the leg parent. So basically that's what this basically does. The leg parent basically I think it parents the legs with the torso so that they move with the torso. So I made it so that the legs parent or move with the torso whenever I move so when I move the torso now, the whole thing moves, but like at 29, as you can tell, only the upper body and everything moves, but the legs stay in place. So this made jumping and like things like that a lot easier. And I recommend this whenever you're doing flips and things like that, to always do this kind of thing, because it makes things like 100 times easier, honestly. So yeah, there's that. And then also, one thing I don't agree with in this rig, this is actually a nice thing, and I like the idea of it, the smart move thing. However, a lot of the time it kind of screws up my movement and stuff, so I tend to turn off smart move and arms, and obviously like the whole auto move thing, that's cool and all, but I don't like using that. I like to make my own stuff, so I turn all that stuff off initially. Figure out what you can and cannot do, and look for rigs that have IK switches, FK switches, because those help a lot. For like, for example, if you're trying to climb something, having a way to turn your hands into IK arms make things a lot easier, because that'll basically allows you to do things like this. So basically do that, and you can move your body, but your hands kind of stay in a place. And if you want to like do a getting up animation, that'll help a lot, because your hands will stay in place. And yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Let me know in the comments below of what kind of tutorial you want next, and I will see you guys later.
Ripples fade away. Human hearts aren't so lucky. Those battle scars remain.